Hey everyone, we're going to be spending this week of Advent in the book of Isaiah, starting in Isaiah 7. When the house of David heard that Aram had allied itself with Ephraim, the heart of King Ahaz and the heart of the people shook as the trees of the forest shake before the wind. Again the Lord spoke to Ahaz, saying, "Ask a sign of the Lord your God. Let it be as deep as the grave or as high as heaven." But Ahaz said, I will not ask. I won't put the Lord to the test. Isaiah said, "Hear then, O house of David. The Lord himself will give you a sign. Look, the young woman is with child and shall bear a son and shall name him Immanuel. He shall eat curds and honey by the time he knows how to refuse the evil and choose the good. For before this child knows how to refuse the evil and choose the good, the land before whose two kings you are in dread will be deserted." Okay, there's a lot of names and stuff in that. We're going to break it down, don't worry. But I think there's two bad ways of reading this text that are a little too simplistic. One is to say, see, this proves and predicts Jesus. It's only about him and the virgin birth. And the other way of reading it, I think that's too simplistic, is to say, well, actually, it's not at all about a virgin birth. And it only relates to Isaiah's time. Now, it is true, as you heard there, the Hebrew term that's used in Isaiah is a real general term for a young woman. It's not the specific word for virgin, but when the Hebrew got translated into Greek, they did choose the word that more specifically means a virgin girl. And that's the version of the text that the New Testament writers would have been reading. But I think we should read this as a both and situation rather than an either or. And so we do need to know Isaiah's context. The reason all these names matter is that the king at the time, King Ahaz, was really worried. He was afraid about these two other nations that were going to come in and maybe destroy everything. And so Isaiah comes and promises a sign through the Lord that before this child, who is born to this young woman, who's probably the king's wife, before this young child is grown, this threat will be gone. And the prediction actually comes true. But is that all that there is to the story? I think it's important to distinguish between prediction and fulfillment. Christ is not necessarily predicted by these prophets, but he does give the fullest and deepest expression of God's saving acts. I think Brian Zahn explains this best. He says, no one could have predicted the Messiah would be born to a virgin from reading Isaiah 7, but once we know that Christ, the true Immanuel, was born not just of a young woman, as it says in the Hebrew text, but of a virgin, as it says in the Greek Septuagint, then we can see it. It's only by reading the scriptures in the light of Christ that we access their full meaning, a meaning that is as deep as the grave and as high as heaven. For Isaiah, Immanuel meant that God is on our side, but for Matthew, Immanuel meant that God had actually joined humanity. With the full telling of the gospel, we hear how Immanuel came from heaven and descended to hell that he might heal humanity and span heaven and hell with the salvation of God. So God maybe just fulfilled their translation instead of the original text. However you understand what's going on here, we do look to Christ. And we can still ask, why are we afraid if God is with us? There are countless stories of the way that God has been and continues to be with us. But we believe the incarnation is the greatest sign of all.